Hi, I'm Jocelyn Birch. I'm the Director of Experience at the Mill.
All right, so our talk, how are GANs, generative adversarial networks, revolutionary content creation. So we thought we'd start with a little game for you guys, for the audience, right? Or next slide, please, I guess. The clicker is not clicking. All right,
Yeah,
so
let's play a
Jocelyn?
game. So we can go to the next slide, and the game is simple. You just have to determine which one is AI and which one is a photograph.
Let's
You can
test you
just
guys.
Shout
All
it
right.
out. Do you think it's A or you think it's B?
Who thinks it's A? Who thinks it's A? Raise your hand. I see one hand, two hands. Okay, who thinks it's B?
Oh, it seems like the consensus is B.
All right, let's see.
Wrong.
Wrong.
Actually, A.
Wow, you've lost $5 million.
Next up, A or B? What do we think?
Raise your hand if you think it's A.
AI generated. A, okay.
Who thinks the AI generated is B? Yeah.
Okay, this seems like more B.
I don't see the ladies raising their hands. Okay.
A. The folks that said A got it right. The folks that said B got it wrong again.
Wow, you lost another $5 million. All right, next slide, please.
A or B, scissors, what do we think?
Raise your hand if you think it's A.
It's real. That was A is real, right?
A is real. Okay,
and B?
So not
Who
AI
thinks
generated.
it's B?
B.
Raise your hands. Don't be afraid. Come on, don't be afraid to be wrong. Okay. Are you right or are you wrong? Next slide, please.
I think the group got that one. They got B.
All right, next one, please.
Hamburgers, A or B, what do we think? Which one is AI generated? Do we think it's A? Raise your hands.
Raise your hand if you think it's A. That's AI generated.
Do we think it's B? Does anyone think it's B?
Raise your hands.
Okay.
Raise your hands if you think it's B.
A is the AI generated image here. I thought that was the easiest one personally, but
yeah, look at that bun. Look at that cheese right there.
Something's up with this meat. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's not quite right. Okay, next. Last one of our quiz. Do we think A is AI generated? Raise your hand.
Raise your hand if you think it's A. Raise your hand if you think the first one. Yeah, okay. Raise your hand if you think it's B.
B. You guys are on. Okay. You're on to our game.
Congratulations. You've taken the money home.
You're all winners.
All right.
Okay, well, now we're going to get into the less fun stuff, less audience participation stuff. And I'm going to actually explain what a GAN is, because when I told the majority of people that we were doing this chat, most people asked me what a GAN was. So I figured I'd start there. If you already know what a GAN is, you can, fall asleep or go check something else out or whatever during this part. So a GAN is a generative adversarial network. We can move to the next slide. That is a subset of machine learning. I think we all know what machine learning is by that now, but I did put a helpful little widely used AI technique that involves training algorithms to learn patterns and make predictive data. So we can move to the next slide. Basically what a GAN is two systems pitted against each other in a cage match battle, where you have one system that is doing exactly what you guys just did, which is a discriminator that is discriminating between, is this a data set or is this not a data set? So is this a picture of a cheetah or is this not a picture of a cheetah? And it is determining whether the data set that you input is the data set that you meant to input, or it's a fake set of data. So you're kind of got this discriminating system happening that is one system of a neural network. And then the second part of the system is a generator. So it's generating fake versions of your data set. So if it's a picture of a cheetah, it's making a whole bunch of fake versions of a cheetah and trying to see if the discriminator can tell that it's a fake version of the cheetah. So basically, you have one system that is discriminating whether your data set is the data set. Is it a picture of a cheetah? Is it not a picture of a cheetah? You have another system that is generating fake versions of that data set. So fake versions of a picture of a cheetah. And then the two systems are pitted against each other, unsupervised, to enhance the system or make it more robust. So you're really just using two systems against each other to adversarially train and create the most robust system that you possibly can. So, what we're really doing here is seeing if a generator can generate data input, that fools the discriminator. And if it fools the discriminator learns. And if it doesn't fool the discriminator, then the generator learns. It learns it needs to make better images because it's not fooling the discriminator. So this is the lovely picture of that, which is that your system got trained with real data, real examples. Your generator system is creating fake examples, and your discriminator is trying to determine what is the real data set and what is the fake data set. Or if your fake data set is fooling your discriminator, then your discriminator needs to learn and advance its parameters to learn better, to become a better discriminator. So hopefully that makes sense, everyone, and we can move on to how it gets used for content creation.
Right, so now, how are GANs used in the real world? Well, that's actually a way more complicated than you might think. Despite all the buzz and the hype, and despite the amazing tools that we see popping out on a regular basis, and including a lot of the things we've seen today at Siggraph, is actually testing and implementing these systems at a studio level for higher quality footage. It takes a really long time, and you really need to plan out for it. So how are they being used in the real world right now? Well, not as much in real world scenarios, right? Because, I mean, and I don't mean this with any disrespect, but if you're doing YouTube videos or TikTok videos or stills, well, that's different, right? But for example, our company, so I'm Technicolor, right? And Jocelyn's the mill, so I work with MPC, Micros Animation, with Technicolor games, and and with the amazing people at the mill, right? So talking about MPC specifically, the bar is set really, really high, and the same goes for the mill. So for this higher quality footage, you really need to have a game plan on how you're going to be implementing the systems. So even though not GAN specific, right now, for example, at MPC, we're using another type of machine learning. So for example, we have Meshroom, which does 3D reconstruction and camera tracking. We use machine learning for denoising, image processing, different types of post-production tasks, rotoscoping, right, masking, complex simulations, and so on. Now, when it comes to virtual production and how we're using it, when it comes with an LED stage, we're actually always talking to the major players in the industry, and we actively want to keep innovating and keep testing on the tools that are out there. And I'll talk about that in a second. But first, Justin, do you want to talk about what you guys are doing at the mill?
Yeah, so we are R&Ding. We have a pretty rigid pipeline, in all honesty, for our VFX pipeline, but we're trying to see how different systems and tools can be utilized in that pipeline. We are also using machine learning in different systems for sort of standardizing more repetitive tasks, like rotoscoping, or things that, are less favorite sort of tasks of artists, to be honest, and things that would make sense to be automated and kind of less time consuming if they were machine based. So, yeah. This is an example of us doing that. This is a pretty ethical example of using AI systems. What we did was we got a whole bunch of authorized artwork from R.H. Geiger, who's a very famous artist. He gave us a whole bunch of his content. We trained a neural network on his content, and then it was all used to create generative AI visuals to serve as the background for the latest Blondie concert tour. So that's an example of getting permission from artists, being able to use these systems in an ethical way.
Now, these are some examples in virtual production. Yes, you can integrate ChatGPT with Unreal Engine, which is something that we're looking into. We're actively testing Omniverse from NVIDIA. We're really keen to test Kubrick once that is available, right? So the good thing, like when it comes to, for example, virtual production, and when in our case that we have an R&D stage and we do a lot of demos and showroom, and we use it as a showroom, we have the ability to then be testing and iterating and seeing how in the future this can actually be implemented at scale, because that's kind of like the key, at scale. Did you want to talk at all about any of this?
I feel like we are using ChatGPT to supplement copywriting scripts. We're using Stable Diffusion quite a bit, actually, for kind of content creation, generation, ideation moments, where we're also using Midjourney to kind of support concept ideation more than anything. And then Runway we actually are using for spots. We've done a few spots that actually use Runway to be background systems for various TV spots. One for Salesforce, which very much played into the AI aesthetic. So it was a good choice to use that one.
Now, they are being used when it comes specifically to virtual production for virtual set design, for virtual character creation, real-time rendering and texturing, for procedural content generation, for in-camera visual effects, and then for visual effects later on. Now, however, we do have to remember, like Jocelyn was saying, but when I talk about like visual effects later on, this is why we're able to test, right? Like different tools that are available before, like in the pre-production pipeline, in virtual production. Because once it goes into visual effects, the visual effects pipeline is, again, it's very rigid. So when you actually want to implement these tools at scale, you really have to do a cost analysis. You really have to do appropriate and accurate time estimations. And you definitely, and 100%, want to define what the business benefits, right, for your particular company are going to be. What kind of gains do you want? Because these gains are not going to, you're not going to see the results right away. So whether these are, human efficiencies, or whether these are, you just want to automate as much as possible to make it better for the artists, because we're very artist forward our company, well, that is something that you have to take into consideration before you could actually implement any of this at scale. Which I think, speaking about being artist forward and human forward, I thought this would be a nice segue. We didn't want to not talk about, the elephant in the room, the writers and the actors strike, because ultimately we do understand what their concerns are, right? Like, these are just some of the things that they're worried about. They're also worried, of course, about they have ethical and creative concerns. They don't want their faces, their bodies, their voices, and even their writing styles being used or copied without compensation, right? So we understand that. Now, from our point of view, and I think, Jocelyn, if you want to add anything to that, we are all about the artists and just making their lives easier.
Yeah, I think, we're still very focused on ideation being human-centered. I don't think we're at a place where ideation can come from these systems yet. And we want to make sure that we're replacing tasks with these systems are replacing the tasks that are not artist-focused. And we want to make sure that, we still need artists to create and complete all of these tasks that are more generative in nature in terms of like ideation. So, I mean, these are tools. They're tools to supplement artists.
Artists, exactly, because there will never be a replacement for human creativity, like at all.
At least
right?
not for a very long time.
and ultimately, right? I think technological advancements and change are completely inevitable, but as long as we're always human and creativity first, I think that's where we'll benefit the most.
Yeah, but I also think it's a positive not to sort of be scared of new systems or new ways of doing sort of methodologies. I think there is a very traditional way that VFX has been done, but I think there's a huge improvement in how those workflows can change and adapt and become easier, more effective, and more efficient.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And with that, we're going to hand it over to you, dear audience, for questions.
So you mentioned ChatGPT or GPT 3.5, whatever. Are you using other language models like either the Vicuna or Llama 2, the new Meta one that just came out? Anything tuned specifically for instruction sets?
In all honesty, no.
Okay.
We are really just using ChatGPT. We are actually using ChatGPT's API
Right.
in some of our work and implementing it into some of the projects that we're currently taking on. I can't talk about them too much because they're very much under wraps right now.
Sure.
But we've been utilizing that like open source model and using it to integrate into other projects to help kind of manage a data set. So, but not other systems. Really, just ChatGPT-4 and yeah.
Is it just because it was out first, or is it just there's too many things changing and one seems to be stable?
Our team that does the R&D research and does the experiential work is still pretty small within the mill. So we do have to sort of prioritize where we're spending our time. Can't explore everything. And it was first, and it also has a pretty simplistic, API to be able to integrate. So that's why.
Okay. Well, if they'd like to talk more, I'm open.
Hey everyone. So for something like Midjourney, what do you propose as one iteration of ways to give credit where credit's due and look at the source where your AI-generated image came from?
I think I'll let you.
We have been using Midjourney mainly pre-final work. So it's really for concept ideation, trying to get a director's vision clear before we head into sort of a shoot or any final CG. So it is a useful tool. It is a useful tool to try to talk about the same visual language, really try to understand what a director's vision is or a CG soup or what we're going for. And in all honesty, that's how we've been using it. We haven't been using it in kind of final renders. That said, I do think there are ways to be ethical about using AI systems. We can create LARAs with work that is approved. We can train these models with artist work that we've already received, like we did with the H.R. Geiger example. So we can get artists permission and opinions before we start training these models. Of course, they still do need to understand that once it gets into these models, their work can be shifted and changed and not the ultimate vision of what their work was. So I think it's also on us to be ethical in how we explain how their work is going to be used.
Yeah, and the same like when we're using it in virtual production is very much just to convey an idea or maybe some concepts not being understood in a meeting, then you can showcase that. But again, this is why we wouldn't be using it in, say, a final product, because there's also not enough regulation right now. We will be delving into some really hairy legal and ethical issues right there. And also, in all honesty, it also takes quite a while to get the appropriate result, right? So sometimes that's we've been using it just to convey like a quick idea, but because we've been looking at it for quite a while and testing it and playing with it, because if we just wanted to like pop it up and show something, the prompt would probably give us a result that we wouldn't be necessarily wanting to show the client.
That is a really fair point. Even when we're using Midjourney for concept ideation, we're often bringing it back into Photoshop and fixing a few things that don't quite work. So although it is a tool we're using, it's an imperfect tool. I don't think that it's able to interpret enough mediums currently to really, take the value that away from other tools that we can use. So looks like we're needing to wrap up, but yeah, it's imperfect.
All right. Thank you so much, Mariana.
Thank you for having us.